loved my theme music. I must get that on CD. Melissa, we have to play that everywhere I go. I want to thank Andy Tobias for that wonderful introduction and for his leadership. He has been an inspiration to us. I know all of us in this room, and I'm grateful to be here. To the other Michelle, the other First Lady, hopefully. There's another Michelle on the way. Michelle mentioned to me when I met her earlier that we have more in common, that we each have a brother named Craig. So it is destiny. I'd also like to acknowledge Governor Dean, who is on his way, I understand. He was supposed to introduce me but got caught up in flight traffic. But I want to acknowledge him for all his hard work in building this party. Again, he's delayed. His flight had a bit of trouble, but he should be arriving shortly. And I know we're looking forward to hearing from him, and we're proud to have him as the chair of this party. I'd also like to recognize the members of Unite Here, Local 6, who are working this event tonight. And we want to give them all a round of applause for the work that they're doing. I am honored to be with you in a week that reminds us just how far we've come as a country. 5 years ago today, the Supreme Court delivered justice with the decision in Lawrence versus Texas that case stated that same-sex couples would never again be persecuted through the use of criminal law. And on Saturday, we recognized the anniversary of the day people stood up at Stonewall and said, enough. These anniversaries remind us that no matter who we are or where we come from or what we look like, we are only here because of the brave efforts of those who came before us. That we are all only here because of those who marched and bled and died, from Selma to Stonewall, in a pursuit of that more perfect union that is the promise of this country. And over the course of this campaign, we've seen a fundamental change in the level of political engagement in this country. We've seen this renewed sense of possibility and a hunger for change like I've never seen before. We've seen people of all ages and backgrounds investing time and energy like never before. People writing $20, $30, $50 checks. We like the big donors, don't get me wrong. But it's just been amazing to see a grandmother on a rope line crunch a $20 bill in your hand, probably the last she's had, and we've seen that time and time again on the campaign trail. We've seen people talking with their neighbors about candidates and issues and superdelegates, working hard to clarify misperceptions, challenging one another not just to think differently about this country, but about the world and our place in that world. And it's precisely this type of individual engagement and investment that has been the mission of Barack's life. Barack has always believed that there is more in this country that unites us than divides us. That our common stories and struggles and values are what makes this country great. That meaningful change never happens from the top down, but from the bottom up. And I'll never forget the first time that I realized that there was something special about Barack. It was in that summer that I was mentoring Barack about 20 years ago. We were just getting to know one another. As Andy said, I was his advisor. And he wanted to take me out on a date. I wasn't having any of that. So he tried, and eventually he wanted me to get to know him better by introducing me to the work that he felt defined who he was, his work as a community organizer. So I remember it so clearly. He took me to a small church basement on the far south side of the city, where a group of neighborhood residents were gathered, folks he knew from his years as a community organizer before he had attended law school. And those folks in that church basement were desperate for change, just like so many of us have felt in this country today. They were regular Americans struggling to build a decent life for themselves and their families, single mothers living paycheck to paycheck, grandmothers trying to raise grandchildren despite incomes that don't allow them to do it well, men unable to support their families because the jobs had disappeared because of the closing of steel mills in that community. And like most Americans, the folks in that church basement, they didn't want much. They weren't asking for much. They just wanted a little dignity and respect. And I watched Barack walk into that basement, and he took off his jacket like he does. He was cute then, too. He rolled up his sleeves and instantly connected with each and every single person in that room. He spoke eloquently about what he called the world as it is and the world as it should be. And I remember it clearly. He said the key to change is understanding that our job as citizens of this nation is to work hard each and every day to narrow the gap between those two ideas. He explained that we often settle for the world as it is, even if it doesn't reflect our personal values. But he reminded us that it's only through determination and hard work that we slowly make the world and it is and the world as it should be one and the same. And his words were powerful not only because they made us believe in him, but they challenged each of us to believe in ourselves. And one of the many reasons why I am so proud of Barack in this campaign, how he's handled himself, is because he is still the same man that I fell in love with in that church basement. His unyielding belief in the simple idea that closing the gap between the world as it is and the world as it should be is precisely why he will be a president that will make us all proud. Because Barack is not new to the cause of the LGBT community. It has been a conviction of his career since he was first elected to public office. In his first year in the Illinois State Senate, Barack co-sponsored a bill amending the Illinois Human Rights Act to include protections of LGBT men and women. He worked on that bill for 7 years, serving as the chief co-sponsor and lobbying his colleagues to reject the political expedience of homophobia and make LGBT equality a priority in our state. In 2004, his efforts paid off as that bill finally became law, prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity in the workplace, in housing, and in all public places. He's led on gender-based violence with his work on the Illinois Gender Violence Act, successfully reaching across the aisle to put in place the nation's strongest law giving the survivors of sexual assault or domestic violence legal remedy against their attacker. He joined his colleagues in fighting to include explicit protections for the LGBT community in that act. He lost that battle, but his efforts brought gender violence in the LGBT community into the political consciousness like never before. In 2004, after hearing from gay friends and supporters about the hurtful impact of DOMA, Barack went on record during his U.S. Senate race calling for its complete repeal. And as a U.S. Senator, he voted to protect our Constitution from the stain of discrimination by voting against the federal marriage amendment. Barack's record is clear. There is so much at stake.